Welcome to the I Hate Humans podcast. I am your host, King William Thompson, aka the anti-social people person, aka the laziest man in podcasting. And I am joined by my wonderful co-host, the world's greatest co-host, Princess G, aka
Sometimes.
Real Quick, aka Sergeant Slaughter's illegitimate daughter. You're always the greatest host, the greatest co-host of all time. Always, in my book. That'll never change. You know.
Don't make me air out dirty laundry outside. What's good?
You get some water. We doing good, man.
Yeah.
Good. I wanted to spin the block, so to speak. And
That's trauma. It's trauma evoking for me spinning the block. It's never been a good thing.
Considering the subject matter, it's fitting. You know, it's only right. It's only right that we call it what it is. We spinning the block. See, I gotta figure out I gotta set a timer to tell myself when I can't curse. Like, I feel like I'll be cursing way too early on in the episodes, or maybe it's just that some people listen make me conscious of the fact that I curse a lot. And I want to be better. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to take back that curse word that I was just about to say. And try to find another word to use, right? I should be smart enough. All right. So first of all, before we get started, everybody, all of our listeners, as always, I want to thank you guys for joining us. It's great to have y'all here. We're going to continue to keep these discussions going. We're going to give you guys all that we have, everything we got, so we can try to affect some good change, right? But today, Princess, I want to spin the block, like I said, and discuss hip hop and the history of hip hop and how things have evolved. So I want to go back to when I was a little kid and the hip hop that I was listening to in the early 80s, mid 80s. I'll start at the mid 80s, like as a kid listening to, artists like LL and KRS-One and Public Enemy, Rakim, Nice and Smooth, EPMD. All of these were my favorite artists growing up. But then what happened in about 88 was NWA hit the scene. And when NWA hit the scene, their content, the subject matter of their content, it was very hardcore, very much in your face. I was listening to Straight Outta Compton yesterday, and I ain't gonna lie to you, Princess, that shit is hard. Like, it's to this day, the record is hard. I'm listening to it and I'm jamming with it. But if I could rewind back to 88 when I was a little boy, I didn't listen to that album back then. Like, nobody was buying that type of content for me. So I only saw maybe some of the videos on Video Music Box. Like, I remember watching Express Yourself, but I don't really remember the other songs on Video Music Box. But listening to it now as an adult who understands,
sounds different.
It definitely sounds different. Like, hearing one of my favorite lines is hilarious on the album. It's so fucking ignorant, but Eazy-E says, "Straight out of Compton, a brother that'll smother your mother." It's like, ignorant, brother. Why are you gonna do that? But the content itself, they were teenagers, right? The NWA, they were kids. They were kids making this music, and they were definitely reporting on what was happening around them. I can't blame them for what they decided to do, because they were just expressing themselves over music like a lot of other people do, and they had no idea that it would turn into what it did, right? But I think we have to ask the question now, as we are looking back 35 years. Was it good for the culture that NWA was as successful as they were with that content? And I want to examine also all of the things that followed. So, and before I continue, let me pause for a moment, and I'll ask for any input that you might want to add from your perspective.
I mean, the question about whether or not it's good for the culture, I think, has a lot of layers, because I think we have to start thinking about what is good for the culture, or what was good for the culture, and whether or not Straight Outta Compton lent to that.
Okay.
I think it's very important to recognize that what they were doing, they weren't, as you said, they didn't know what that would become. And I don't think that it was even the thought process of what will this become. I think it was, this is our reality. This is what's happening in our neighborhoods, and we need a way to express this. If you ask me, when I think about that album or that record, or, you know, at that time, thinking about what the climate was, I think it was needed in that time because of what was happening, right? Like, we needed to bring attention to what was happening. I would like to assume that the point of bringing attention to that was to make changes. Unfortunately, I don't think we saw much of that. I don't think we saw a lot of changes happening. I think it was used against us, in the sense that now we are the people, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Black culture. We are now using this as rhetoric. We're using this to lash out at the system.
Right.
We're not trying to work within the system. We're trying to do all these things that's going to go against the system.
Right.
And so in that moment, yeah, I think it was needed, because I don't think the system was what it should have been. And somebody needed to call attention to that. Now, what happened after the fact, I don't think any of us could have predicted, but
you know, it's funny you say that, because I think many of us could have predicted it. And I say that with, again, the understanding now of how the mind works, right? The books that have been written on mind power and, you know, how to condition the mind in order to produce specific results predate hip hop by probably 100 years. So with that in mind, I believe that the people who are of higher power on, you know, in society, I think they're privy to that information. And I think that they already had the understanding that if we can popularize this sort of content and feed it to a community who on a daily basis, they live a life that can verify the things that they're hearing, they understand that it's going to take their focus away from the opportunities that they have to change those situations, because they're always going to be focused on the thing that they're fighting.
When you let me ask you this: when you say that we could have predicted it because this information had already been out there, who had access to the information?
It wasn't us who had access to it.
Well, that's why we couldn't have predicted it.
No, I'm saying we could predict that giving this type of music to the people would yield the results that it did. I think that was predictable, because I think that happened as a result of simply how the mind works, how we digest things that we see. And, you know, if we don't have experience in life that counters those things, then subconsciously we just accept it as truth. So if you know, oppression and struggle is your reality when you're living life and you see something expressed artistically that is in alignment with that, but it's over a beat and you enjoy it, so you listen to it on repeat, then that's what you're feeding yourself. You're not feeding yourself the way out. You're just feeding yourself confirmation that what you experience and what you feel is legitimate.
Okay, I might be able to buy that argument.
Okay, so I think it was predictable, and I think it was a plan. If I'm being straight up, I don't think it's a coincidence that while we had, we mentioned before the records for stopping the violence, like on the East Coast. I'll say this. When I was a kid, I was listening primarily to East Coast artists, right? As a New Yorker, we listened to New York artists. Hip hop was still new. And in my world, it was like New York is trying to decide what direction we're going in with this. So we never had, before NWA came out, we didn't have a gangsta rap movement in New York. Hip hop wasn't about that. And as a matter of fact, after NWA came out, we had a Stop the Violence movement in New York, where all of the artists were actually coming together and working together to counter the genre and the culture of hip hop being taken into this direction. Because they knew, like they being like Boogie Down Productions, that's why I always say, like, when you listen to Self-Destruction today, they knew that the culture would end up what it became. And I think it's because they had an understanding of the mind and how important it is to feed it food for thought, things that were healthy. And I think it was understood that having certain types of content in the music wasn't gonna bear good results. So those movements weren't financially backed by, these big record labels, because I feel like they knew that would actually affect change down the ladder. People at the bottom would start to have their eyes opened up to, okay, these are the things that we need to reject so that we can take advantage of the opportunities that we have to change our circumstances collectively. That's not necessarily what the music that NWA was making was inspiring people to do. It was more of a cry out for, like if you're angry and you punch a pillow, it might make you feel better. It's probably not gonna solve your problem though. Like the problem that you had before you started punching the pillow is probably still there. So that's kind of how I would analogize the Straight Outta Compton. It was like punching the pillow. It felt great because when you hear them say "fuck the police," and they're harassing me all the time just because I'm a teenager with a pager. That's relatable, because most of us who live in heavily policed communities, we can relate to being harassed by police officers just for nothing, just for walking down the street or sitting in front of our house or sitting in front of our building. We can relate to that. So it's like, yeah, fuck them, fuck the police. But how many solutions were provided on the record? I didn't hear any. And it took off. So you have a situation like that. The corporate side of things come into play. They start to put money behind that. So then it tells the people who are also interested in coming into the game, like, oh, there's money to be made over here if we do this and that. So we have that happen around 88. 88 is when Straight Outta Compton is released. Like I said, New York tries to start the Stop the Violence campaign, but you can't compete with the machine if you don't have the money to. So gangsta rap takes over the culture. Then in, I think, what was it, 92, when Doggy Style comes out, Snoop's first album. Classic. Like, for my money as a hip hop fan, Doggy Style is the greatest production in hip hop history in terms of beat, the beat production on an album. I don't think there's ever been a better album to this day that's been better produced than Doggy Style. So round of applause to Dr. Dre and Daz Dillinger, because I think those two were the most responsible for putting that album together. But when that album came out, C. Delores Tucker, may she rest in power. C. Delores Tucker was appalled, to say the least. She had a lot to say with regard to the artwork and the content matter of the album.
Principle must come before profit. A year ago, I established the National Political Congress of Black Women's Entertainment Commission, headed by Dionne Warwick, Melba Moore, Terry Rossi of Billboard magazine, and Vaughn Alexander, our director. It had one primary goal: the task of examining and developing strategies and solutions for reshaping and maintaining positive images to preserve the dignity and the heritage of our youth, instead of continuously exposing our youth to negative media that distorts their images of male-female relationships, that undermines the stability of our families, communities, and nation by encouraging violence, abuse, and sexism as acceptable behaviors, and perpetuates the cycle of low self-esteem of African-American youth.
Well, I want to explore whether or not she was right, whether or not C. Delores Tucker was right, because the artists were definitely kicking back at what she was saying, because they were speaking, again, like we just said, they were speaking their experiences. But as an elder, she was speaking from, I believe, a position, like an elevated position. You know, like they're in the game. She's outside the game. So it's like if you have, like, if you're a coach, if you're a sport, if you play a sport, or even if you're like, if you got a job, people in management, their job is not to do what you're doing. Their job is to watch you and everybody else and figure out how to make all of you more effective working together. So that's the role that she played. And she's telling them, this ain't it. Talking about women this way is, what did she say? She said, they're killing the souls of women and their prodigies.
It has got to stop. If you want to know why I'm on the warpath, when I saw this, I said, that's it. We march again, and we're going to keep on marching and demonstrating the truth. For 400 years, profit came before principle, as black women bore the brunt of slave masters' degradation. But even through the Middle Passage, the peculiar institution of slavery, the spirit of black women and their families could not be broken. Today, however, through the lyrics of rappers who display no respect for women, no respect for families, and little respect for themselves, the souls of our sisters are being destroyed, and so too their progeny.
So the women and the children are being killed by the messaging in this music and the imagery, right? And I just want to explore whether or not she was right about that. I want us to look back with the 2020 hindsight and just explore that a little bit, because I feel like she's right. I feel like she was right. And had we listened, we'd probably be sitting in a better position today, because we would have been able to use the tool that we created to serve us better. And I'm not sure like the rappers who she was talking about back then, like, you know, Snoop, you know, Tupac mentioned her on the record too. Delores Tucker, you's a motherfucker.
We don't quote him on the show.
Come on, man. We don't hate Tupac on this show.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't. We don't hate Tupac on this show.
Biggie all day. Carry on.
You can love both of them. I love them.
Oh, you can't.
Yes, you can. I'm upset that Tupac chose the route that he chose. Because again, and this is what Delores Tucker was saying. She said for 400 years, we've taken profit over principle. It has to stop. And Tupac on record was saying like it's about the money. Like we're doing this for the money. But it's I guess it's the question of how do you go about solving a problem, right?
So can we pause there for a second? Can we park there for a second?
Absolutely.
Because I think it's important for us to explore that, the profit over principle.
Yes.
I think when you first hear that, it sounds horrid, right? Like we should not be selling our souls for money, right? But I also want you to take into account where they were at that time, where there weren't a lot of Black people in positions of power. There weren't a lot of Black people making a lot of money. Our neighborhoods are being riddled with crime and violence and drugs. And so is it possible to look at these times where, yeah, we shouldn't be selling our souls, but we're finally doing something that could possibly bring us out of that. Even if they're not looking at it that way, like I'm gonna make this record and take my whole family out of poverty. Like even if they're not consciously looking at it that way, but just finally being able to see something different in their bank accounts, being able to move out of certain neighborhoods, right? So as much as we want to say, yeah, that's a horrible statement to make, I think you also have to think about the mind frame and the mindset at that time. And at that time, I think it might have been more of a, my back is against the wall.
Right.
And this is how I can see it. I can't, I don't know about Tupac because I know he went to dance school and all the other shit because he corny. But hey, that was petty. That was petty. Right. But you have to think about a lot of these artists, they're not formally educated.
Right.
There's not a lot of opportunities to make this kind of money with the skill set that they currently have.
Right.
So can we really knock them for using the skill set that they do have to do something? And then we always have to talk about what's selling, right? NWA comes on the scene and they blow up. The best form of flattery is imitation. So if they can do it, I can do that, right? So as much as I think we can't just sit here and talk about what should, like I always say, we can't talk about what should, we got to talk about what is. And in that time, I don't know that they could afford to think about the profit not being, what's the phrase you used?
She said principle before profit.
There you go. They can't afford to think about principle before profit because they got to eat.
See,
isn't there a space for that?
There's space for it, but I think that's lazy work, unfortunately. I think because okay, if you're giving someone therapy, if someone is dealing with issues that are limiting them in life, so they have the capability of having way more than they do, if they were just to make certain adjustments within themselves, that it could eliminate all of the problems, the external problems that they deal with for the most part. Like we all have to deal with external issues, but if you're able to focus on yourself and become the best version of you, it has a way of making your outcome desirable more times than not. So as a culture, as a people, if we're dealing with something that is calling for us to make adjustments within ourselves and we refuse to do it, but instead we embrace the things that make us feel better about the dysfunction that we've accepted into our culture and into, you know, our day-to-day behaviors, then all it's going to do is those issues are going to become stronger. They're going to get bigger.
I think the distinction there, though, is you said that this person is in therapy, which indicates to me that somebody is having this conversation with you. Somebody's telling you that you have other options.
Right.
Who is telling them that they have other options?
But this is the issue. We at least on the East Coast, I can't really speak for what was happening out West, but on the East Coast, our artists you could see the effort that would, like, we used to walk around with black medallions and things like that back in the day, because there was like an empowering movement that was trying to be formed around the same time that gangsta rap was really starting to take over. It was like a battle within hip hop. Like, who's gonna take the souls of the young people listening to this music and following this culture? Is it gonna be the pro-black, you know, we can do better and we gotta read more and we gotta have knowledge of self and, you know, things like that? Or is it gonna be the street guys selling dope that are violent, they'll whoop your ass, and, you know, they say fuck a bitch and all of these things? Like, who's going to take control? Like, it was a legit battle that was happening, and we know who won.
So as you said that, the first thing that popped into my head was the Martin versus Malcolm debate. You know, do you march peacefully and wait for the change, or do you fight back by any means necessary? Right. And I think to this day, we still haven't figured out which one is which. I don't know. I don't see fault with either theory. So I say that to say that things can coexist. I don't think it has to be one or the other. I do think that there is space for the pro-Black movement probably being the better option, solely because it talks more about unity and us coming together as one, which I think we can all agree that is for the best. But I don't think that the gangster rap negates that. I think it's calling awareness to why we need the pro-Black. Like, I think they could have coexisted in a perfect world.
In a perfect world, for sure. In a perfect world, they would definitely be working together.
Right.
I think it's difficult. It's difficult to destroy at the same time that you're trying to build. And considering who's the target for gangster activities in the hood, is, you know, Black people are the ones that are victim to that. We're the ones targeted from that. So it's hard to glorify that lifestyle and build us up at the same time.
Yes. I don't think I can strategically even argue that. What comes back up for me, though, is there's still this space for us talking about what's happening and bringing attention to that.
Sure.
And I think that still is important. Now, what people do with that information and whether or not groups like NWA is responsible for that, I think is a whole nother question. It's a whole nother conversation. But if their intention was to simply call attention to what is happening and not necessarily to glorify it, I think that becomes how the message was received, not how it was necessarily being given. And for me, that starts with home. Because we listened to gangsta rap and we didn't go outside and start stealing purses and shooting up the block and selling drugs. Right? And I think, like, I remember, I think it was a Jay-Z line. I'm about to disgrace myself if this wasn't Jay-Z, but I'm gonna take the risk. You might have to edit that out because you're not gonna do that to me. But I think it was a Jay-Z line, and he said something about, like, I sold drugs so you wouldn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Hov
And so
you wouldn't have to do that. He said Hov did that. So you wouldn't have to go.
Go princess. I got it. Right. But I say that to say, you know, for me, that was me. I'm calling attention to these things so you don't have to do them. So you know better, you do better.
Right.
I think we just took it out of context. So once again, are we going to blame Jay-Z for that? Are we blaming NWA for that? Are we blaming the people that are now going to live that life? Like, why did you decide to take that message the way that you did?
Right. Right. I mean, I feel that. I feel that, but I was partially raised by Hov. You know what I mean? Like
we all were.
Many kids growing up in the hood at that time, especially if you didn't have like a strong male influence around you, you find it where you can. And Jay-Z was one of those guys who he came into the game with that energy of this is somebody that's a winner. Like, you know, he's popping Cristal and he in the GS3, you know, they playing Monopoly with real money. Like, I watched all of this as a kid. So you see somebody like that, and he's like, yo, how did he do it? Okay, you sold dope, and you telling me not to sell dope, but you sold dope. And look, I want what you got. You telling me to go do something that I have no example for. Like, you telling me don't do what you do, cool. What I'm supposed to do though? Because I want what you got. I want Cristal. I want to play Monopoly with real money. I want to laugh at things that ain't even funny. You know?
Well, he gave you that information in 444.
Fucking 30
20 years later.
After my bid. This nigga ain't even right.
I mean, Biggie taught you how to sell crack and not get caught. 10 crack commandments.
Yeah, but that was after he said, ooh, Biggie, let me jack her. I kick her in the back, hit her with the gat. Chill, shorty, let me do that. He was telling you how to rob before he told you how to sell crack. So after you finish your 1.5 to 3 for armed robbery.
I mean, but so isn't there space though for? Sorry, my computer died. Or it's about to die, and I can't find the whole. So doesn't it suffice to say that after you do this year to 3 bid and you get out, you do not return to the thing that put you there in the first place?
Shit, you gonna get a job?
God forbid.
Recidivism is what? What's the recidivism rate?
Something ridiculous.
Yeah, cinch that you going back. So
well, I mean, I think that's how the system is designed. And I know we're completely off track, so I'm just gonna say this and then we're gonna pivot back. But I think that's how the system is designed, but it's not to say that it's impossible. I know several people that have come home that have turned life around and done things. So I think it comes with support, and you have to be surrounded by the things that's going to support that. And I think that a lot of people that come home don't always have that. But to go back to the show, I don't know that we can hold, I don't necessarily know that we can hold these artists responsible for what people take from their music.
Right.
I don't know that it's fair. Now, I think there's the other part where it's like, if you have a voice, you have to use it responsibly. So what are you going to push? I think it's a delicate line to cross, because as I said, it's not that these people are talking about things that they're not seeing or haven't experienced, right? Like, this is their life, and they're sharing that with the world for hopefully purposes of teaching people about what's going on. And as I said, what people take from that, I'm not sure we can hold them totally responsible for that. So in terms of this Delores Tucker lady, yeah, I think her message made sense. I just don't know if it's fair to wholeheartedly throw that out there and not give the proper context of where those messages are coming from, or why they're being
While they're being put out. Yeah, I got you. I got you. I don't think you're wrong. But I think again, people have to when you're in a situation like what we've been in collectively, I think it only helps if you talk to elders and ask for that guidance, because they have an ability to see, again, they can see the game from an elevated level. So when you can see the game from an elevated level, you understand that if this happens, it's probably setting up this happening down the line. So if we're allowing ourselves to popularize this type of content, it probably means that somewhere down the line, our people are going to be desensitized to it, and it's gonna have destructive results. Like Miss Melody said on self-destruction, if we want to develop and grow to another level, we can't be guinea pigs for the devil. That's what Miss Melody said on self-destruction. What was that, like 90, 89, 90, that record came out, you know? So there were people who had the understanding already of what this was going to bring, but there were people who were so consumed by the pain that it was like, nah, we need to express this. We need this. And we do. We need to release this energy. We need to cry out for what's happening around us. But what really happened is we sensationalized it to a point where it wasn't pain. Like when I listen to NWA's Straight Outta Compton, I'm not feeling pain. Like we understand what the enemy is and what the enemy does, but what do we do besides, you know, like you said, Malcolm and Martin, you know, a lot of the biggest difference that people, I think, see between the two of them is Martin was protest, you know, let's march. Malcolm wasn't really down for the marching. So I think the gangster rap music is more like, that's like the protest, that's the marching. Whereas the knowledge of self that's the empowerment. I think we needed empowerment, but we took the check in exchange for our empowerment.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't, and that's why I brought up Martin and Malcolm, because I've never heard anybody say either of them were wrong. I think it was just a different way of doing things. And that's literally what I thought about. And that's why I said, I think the two could coexist. I don't, because I think, especially for those people that are not from those neighborhoods, that are not living that every day, I do think attention needed to be called to it. Right? Because I think we weren't necessarily in the position to change a lot of that stuff. I think the people that needed to hear it, that were in the position to change a lot of that stuff, they needed to hear it. Now, once again, what they did with that information, whole nother story. But I think in its essence, I think calling attention to what is happening in those hoods and where we lived and how we grew up, I do think that was important. I don't want to take away from that, because it didn't have the effects that we thought it should have. I don't want to take away from the importance of it because it didn't do what it was supposed to do. I think that falls back on us.
Yeah, I don't want to take away the importance of, you know, crying out in that fashion. But what I do want to do, because hip hop is still alive, very much alive, what I do want to do is look back from where we are now and make a determination of what we need to do moving forward. Because
I like that.
Because we have so much, like hip hop has evolved so much from what it was when it was first started, from what it was when I was a kid. When we were kids, what the game is now is nothing like what it was back then. So we have a lot of data to look back and examine. So I want us to look at that and say, okay, the best thing that we can do with this tool that we have is X, Y, and Z, right? So let's use let's use more examples, shall we? You fast forward, like I said, NWA comes out 88. Snoop comes out like 92. And these are like the two, the two albums that I feel really changed. Even like the Chronic too. I think the Chronic was, maybe the Chronic was 92 or 91, and Snoop was like 93. But this was all in that window of time. And these albums really changed the trajectory of hip hop because the music was so fucking amazing. Dr. Dre, oh my goodness, brother. Amazing, amazing work, right? But it changed the game for sure. So we got these albums that come out, and then on the East Coast, you start to see the emergence of, you know, the East Coast version of gangsta rap. So you have your Cool G raps, you have your Nas's, you have your Bigs that come out. And we spoke about this on the last show. I'll just talk about Big and Pac specifically, because this is where we go next. This is our next marker in history. Big comes out 93. I think Ready to Die is 94. By 97, he's dead. Tupac is in the game, I think, with Digital Underground. I don't think he was out in the 80s, in the late 80s. So Tupac's probably 91, like 90,
yeah,
90.
Early 90s.
You know, he's in Juice before he becomes like a big recording artist. He plays Bishop in Juice, and that,
like how we acted in Juice.
We're not gonna keep taking shots at Pop, all right?
Just saying.
But Tupac
has always been a problem child.
He soars to stardom. He soars to stardom in the early 90s. But by 96, he's dead. And all of this is happening in the vein of gangster rap, right?
Pac died before Big?
Yeah, Pac died in September 96. Big died March.
March.
So how many months is that? That's 6 months apart. About 6 months apart, they died.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all via gangster rap. Like, it wasn't I don't feel like it would.
Oh yeah, he did die before Big. Sorry, I was still contemplating that. Yes, he did die. Sorry. I had to do that timeline in my head, like, wait, but yes,
you got to remember, Big was out in Cali after Pac.
Yes.
Like, nobody understood that. Nobody understood that. Like, for those who are watching that may be a little bit younger, and you don't know what it was like at that time. At the time that Big and Pac were going back and forth, and the media created the East Coast, West Coast rivalry, which it's hard to say that it was just a media creation, because I do feel like these are polar opposites in terms of direction in hip hop as well. Like, because like we've been talking about, on the East Coast, there wasn't this gangster rap movement. It was the opposite. It was a movement of why we can't afford to promote these things, why we have to move away from these things. On the West Coast, it was like, fuck that nigga, we gangsters, we'll kill you, we'll fuck your bitch, fuck that bitch, fuck this bitch, all of that. That's what it was. So, people will say the media created East Coast, West Coast. I think the media just labeled it. But it was clearly a division. It was clearly a difference in approach between the two. But if you weren't around back then, it was hot. Like, the streets of hip hop was hot back then. When Pac dropped "Hit 'Em Up," Big drop "Who Shot Ya,"
Worst record of all time. Let's hit him up. Worst hip hop record of all time.
Where does Who Shot You rank on the list of best and worst?
The number one. Came out of Biggie's mouth. There's no such thing as a bad record from Biggie. That don't even exist.
I can't even argue with that. Big is the author of the greatest hip hop album of all time. Life After Death is the greatest album of all time.
That is the greatest album of all time. Life After Death. Absolutely my favorite. Hands down, no questions asked, bar none. Favorite hip hop album of all time. Life After Death. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Life After Death is number one. Matter of fact, leave in the comments because I know a lot of y'all might feel like I know a lot of people feel like what was the Tupac double album? This
Nobody cares.
This show is gonna sound like a lot of Tupac disrespect. I promise that's not what it is.
Yes, it is.
All Eyes on Me. All Eyes on Me. A lot of people feel like All Eyes on Me is better than Life After Death.
Those people are not allowed to talk to me. I'm telling you right now. That's how you feel. Delete my number. We cannot be friends.
We're gonna lose like 50 subscribers. We can't afford this.
Well, you know what we just talked about. Profit over
principle over profit.
Principle over profit. They could go ahead. I ain't mad.
I feel that. But leave in a comment if you feel which album is better. Let us know which album you think is better. Life After Death or All Eyes on Me. I want to know what the audience thinks. You like this ain't no East Coast, West Coast shit. Like that was 25 years ago, right?
Brooklyn, baby.
That.
Always East Coast.
But back on point. Back at that time, there was definitely a big feeling of East Coast, West Coast, East Coast versus West Coast. So once Pac died, although it had nothing to do with anybody on the East Coast, it had nothing to do with Big, but because the beef between them was so thick, it was so pause.
Right, absolutely.
Because the tensions were so thick. People felt like Big should not be in Cali so soon after Pac died. You know, like we said, Pac died September, Big is out there in March. So Big and Pac are killed as a result of this gangster rap era. And it wasn't a moment where our culture came together and said, hold up, we just lost the two biggest solo artists in the history of the game for the gangster rap era. Because like before that, I think MC Hammer was like the biggest. He wasn't a gangster rapper.
Can't touch this.
Doom, 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 doom. And I don't think Big or Pac saw a fraction of the money that Hammer was getting. And he wasn't making no gangster rap. Like, I think we have to continuously emphasize that because these artists have to know that there are other ways to get your money. You're gonna get paid off the talent. Like you can package it however you choose to. People love the art. It ain't gotta be about all of the foul shit that goes on in the hood. It ain't gotta be about that. But anyway, Big and Pac die. The culture has an opportunity to say, you know what? We need to re-examine like what we're doing and how we're doing it. But that doesn't happen. Instead, it was an opportunity for others to step in and fill those shoes because we're going to keep this thing going because the machine is still financing accordingly. And I guess our thirst for opportunity kept us from saying, hold up, wait a minute. We're dying. Like the biggest and most successful of us is dying and we're watching it play out. Maybe we need to stop. But we didn't do that. We didn't do that. And as a result, since that time, I don't know how many rappers we've had killed. I don't know how many rap beefs we've had since then that, you know, at one point would have just been on record, but got to a point where it spilled over into the street. We've also, since that time, we've allowed gang culture to become a fixture in hip hop culture, which, like we spoke about in the last show, has resulted in a number of indictments, federal and state. So I think the question almost answers itself of whether or not C. Delores Tucker was right. Oh, and I didn't even mention this. And this is what I would like to hear your opinion on as well. Because there are female rappers. There always have been. Back in the day, female rappers were presented in a certain way. They carried themselves a certain way. And it wasn't anything like what we see today. MC Lyte, Queen Latifah.
They were so, that was the first one that came out, was MC Lyte. And as far as I'm concerned, they're so much better than the ones we have today.
It's fair to say. It's fair to say. You know, Yo-Yo, Roxanne, Shantae. You know, we mentioned Salt and Pepper. You know, there were female artists back in the day who were respectable, who held their own with the men, were respected by the men, you know. But after this era, after this gangster rap era came in, there was a switch. And now today, you look at these female artists and you look at what they're producing and how they present, and then you look back at what was being said about women on these records that C. Delores
is now coming to fruition. And I want to be fair, right? Because I think the switch started with Lil' Kim and Foxy, right? I think they brought the sex appeal to the game.
True.
However, I do believe that they were still spitting real lyrics, right? Like, you could still listen to them and it was still respected what was coming out of their mouth, no matter how they looked, right? I think now what has happened is we've taken it's like the spectrum, right? Like, you start off with MC Lyte and Queen Latifah, where there was no skin being shown. It was just lyrics and tough shit, right? And then you move into the space of Foxy Brown and Lil' Kim, where it's sexy, but it's still tough shit. And now we've gone all the way Meg Thee Stallion and Cardi B.
Hold on, time out. Because we gotta be for real. Lil' Kim.
Easy killer. Easy.
Meg Thee Stallion, Ice Spice, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj.
I don't know who Ice Spice is.
It's cool. Just know that they don't have shit on Lil' Kim when it comes to over the top raunchy shit. Like,
no, I'm not. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is what's coming out of her mouth.
Me too.
So
no ball.
No, granted, she had, but that's what I'm saying. Like, that was the switch for me. Because yeah, she had some raunchy shit, right? But she also has some tough shit. This Kim we talking about, right? Now we've moved past. There's no tough shit. It's not tough. There's no lyrics to be respected as far as I'm concerned, except for Remy Ma.
Nah, Nicki can rap. Nicki can rap.
Nicki can rap, but I think Nicki gets overshadowed with all the extra shit because she too.
Yeah, the imagery does get in the way.
Right, you know what I'm saying, and that's the difference for me. Like, it was like, for me, little Kim's imagery didn't overshadow what was coming out of her mouth. You respected it regardless.
Yeah, Big's pen was like, what, you know.
Hey, we're not gonna talk about, as Puffy said, he don't gotta write rhymes, he writes checks. Who cares who's writing the rhyme?
I'm just saying.
Leave Kim alone, damn it. You leave Kim alone.
I mean, I love Kim, but it is what it is.
I can't tell with these antics. Anyway, right? But now you fast forward, and I don't respect nothing none of them is saying. Let's be very clear. I don't even want to listen to them. Nicki Minaj included. And it's not that she doesn't have tough stuff. You know, like I like to give credit where it's due. So yes, Nicki definitely has talent, but I think her talent is overshadowed by what she's constantly presenting.
I feel that.
And I think that's the switch for me. That's where we've just gone completely left.
I feel that.
Why did you bring that up? Because I completely lost my train of thought with that.
No, I was just saying you can see the difference in how women are represented in hip hop.
Portrayed.
Yeah, how they're portrayed pre gangster rap and post gangster rap. There's a distinct.
Oh, and I think where you're going with that. Where I want to go with that is that's the stuff that Delores Tucker was talking about.
Exactly.
Right?
That's my point.
And so yes, I do think in that respect she's absolutely right. Once again, though, I have to scale it back because we have to think about what sells, right? Like these chicks are making bread.
Yeah, they're making money. But
right, they're making money.
Delores Tucker gave them bars already.
Principle must come before profit.
It's important.
And I think now is where we get to look at whether or not, now we get to look at whether or not the time frame is really a factor in that, because now we're in a space where Black people have opportunities, right? We have the opportunity to do things differently. We're not in the same space that we were back then when that statement was made, and we were talking about, well, what else do we have? We're not there anymore. So Why are we still embracing that?
And that's why I feel like this is such an important thing to focus on, like this discussion, and why I wanted to go back and bring us up to date from the beginning is because this has been a whole play that's been run, as far as I'm concerned. And it was run beautifully. It was run so beautifully that we're in an age of the internet where we control the product more than we ever have. And yet a large portion of us is still choosing to continue to do what they paid us to do 35 years ago. Like we're doing it on autopilot now because we've been conditioned so well. Acknowledge that. I want us to acknowledge that and choose how we want things to look moving forward. Like, is this culture that we have right now what we want for the culture moving forward? You know, and again, it's no knock to the artists that are creating, because people have a right to create, you know, their art however they choose. But those of us who are in a position like Delores Tucker was so long ago, those of us who are in like an elevated position where we could see the field, so to speak, we can say, nope, that's not good for the future. Like, you can do that shit, rock out, but understand that that's not good for the future. We're going to need to pivot eventually. Like, I see somebody like, you know, Glorilla?
Yes.
I see somebody like Glorilla, right? I cringed the first time I saw her first video with all of her friends like twerking in the middle of the street, like a car parked in the intersection, pouring Henny in each other's mouths and shit like that. One of them was pregnant. Oh man, that was tough to watch. It was tough to watch.
Never saw it. Glad I didn't.
Yeah, it was. I'm gonna send it to you.
No, please don't.
I saw it. You got to see it too.
No, I don't need to see that. This is the problem with us. if you got to suffer, everybody got to suffer around me.
No, listen, because I'm not mad at her. Like, you can't be mad at her. You have people using whatever means they have to change their circumstances. Obviously, if you live in a community where people are pouring Hennessy in each other's mouths like that, it's probably not the most affluent neighborhood. Like, you probably didn't come up with the greatest amount of opportunities and things like that. So we ain't here to judge. Ain't nobody on trial, right? However, I think we can all safely say those types of, like, that type of behavior is not what most of us would want our daughters to choose to do. So with that in mind, we have to look at it and say, you know what, Glorilla, rock out. Make your money, you win. Do what you got to do.
Yeah, but at what cost?
Here's the thing. Make your money, but also life is about growth and development. So just because you're making money doesn't mean that your job is done. It doesn't mean that you're no longer required to continue to look within and grow and develop. And Glorilla, I don't know how old she is, but she looks pretty young. If in 5 to 10 years, she's still parked in an intersection, twerking on the car, pouring Hennessy into her friends' mouths, then we have a problem because you're no longer growing and developing. You're stagnant.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Because this is where I think we have to take accountability as to what we're consuming. So isn't it fair to say that if in 10 years she's still parked in the intersection twerking on cars and pouring Hennessy into her pregnant homegirl's mouth?
The pregnant girl, I didn't see that.
That's what I got, but whatever, right?
I didn't
if
say
that's
that.
still happening,
I'm send you the video.
Isn't it fair to say that that's what her consumers want?
Possibly, but that means you have to change your market because people who are also growing and developing and maturing, it comes a point where they're no longer interested in that. There was a time in my life where that type of shit would have been perfect for me because
that's terrible. I feel like that was never a time for me that I wanted to do that.
Be that as it may. Now, I'm not saying not participating. I'm talking about the viewing it.
He's going to bag one of them, take them home, make her your baby mama?
Nah, I would have just enjoyed watching it. That wouldn't have been, none of them would have been watching.
The reason why I said that, right, is because something that we've talked about, I want to say off camera, that I think is very important to this is that I like the thought process of using what is popping to get on top, right? But then once you're on top, once you get this following, you have the ability to pivot and your followers will follow you.
Yes.
So this is where we talked about last show, great power comes with great responsibility. This is where you do get the opportunity to use your talents for good. And it's no longer about whether or not you're making money because the money's going to come. You've already gotten the fame. You've already gotten the followers. You have your fan base.
Right.
At what point do you stop and say, all right, now I got to do something different? And that's where I think the responsibility lies with the artist. Is once you know that people are watching you, once you know that you have these people that are leaning into your every word, start changing your words. They'll follow.
Sometimes you just got to take that leap. You got to take that leap and say, you know what? I can't continue to do this. I want to do this over here. I'm still me. You know, I'm just a grown, more mature version of me. And if you're happy for me, if you're truly with me, you're gonna rock with me. And if you're not, well, I'm glad we had the time that we had together. You know, I'm glad we were able to binge a little bit, you know, but now I'm moving on to this next chapter and everybody has to, you know, and I think that's something that a lot of artists deal with. A lot of artists deal with that, you know, wanting to expand and to grow according to their new environment. And maybe having that hang up of, damn, are they gonna rock? Are they still gonna rock with me? And maybe even being nervous about it. And then there might be artists who are like, I don't give a fuck. This is what I'm doing. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. You know, but you got to be able to make that decision. And again, because life is about growth and development, like you have an obligation to do so. You know, you don't get to escape that. You have to, whether you are a famous artist or just a person working a 9 to 5, your job within yourself is essentially the same. You know, you're still responsible for growing past the stage that you're at the moment. It don't change for nobody. You know, so I don't know. I think if we do see an artist like Glorilla, if she is still doing the same things all of this time later, I think it's more of a reflection of her not taking on her challenge as an individual to grow. And it's less about whether or not she thinks that people are going to follow her if she changes. I mean, she can make it about that, but that's not what it's really about. It's really about, are you comfortable enough to do it? You know, do you believe in yourself enough to do it and trust that everything's going to work out? Like, or do you have the comfort and the confidence to go principle before profit?
Oh, the one I keep forgetting.
Like, I guess the question is, how much profit do you need before you can prioritize principle? You know, maybe that's what some artists need to do. If you're putting profit before principle, make a number. Once I get to this number, I'm gonna prioritize principle.
I mean, I think the problem with that in and of itself is, you know, what the root of all evil is.
I know what they say. I don't know if I believe it.
You haven't seen that enough to know that that's what it is?
I don't know if it's the root of all evil. I think it's the way that.
Well, what do you think? What do you think I'm about to say? Just because people get it wrong all the time.
I was assuming that you was about to say money.
Say that again?
I said I was assuming that you were about to say money.
No.
Okay.
The root of all evil is the love of money.
And that's where I was about to go. It's not yes. It's not money, right? It's the love of money.
It's the love of money.
Right. Right.
Correct. And so, because at the end of the day, you know, there's a joke that says, if Bill Gates woke up with Oprah Winfrey money,
kill himself.
He would jump out the window.
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey got a lot of money. But Bill Gates got more.
Significantly.
Right. And so I don't know if we can trust that they're going to hit that number and be content. Because they're going to hit that number and see all the money that they can continue to make. And will it be enough for them to say, all right, I've hit that number, now I got to pivot?
We just got to start thinking like that. Like if that's the case, we just have to start thinking like that. We have to start encouraging each other to think that way. Is, you know, if you're going to play the game, play it right.
I think what's important is we have to, and this goes back to what we've been talking about on this show, and that is the presence in the homes, right? I think we have to stop leaving these children, it's what they are, right, to their own devices, so that, yeah, they're listening to this music, but they don't have anybody to correct them. They don't have anybody in that home telling them, like, yeah, that sounds good, but this is what you're going to do. You're going to take your little happy ass to school. You're going to get an education, right? Like, they don't have that. I think we had that. We had parents that, as much as our parents weren't necessarily in the home because they were working as much as they were, I think we had enough fear of our parents to know, don't matter if they home or not, this is what we're not going to do. And it doesn't mean that some of us didn't take to the streets and we didn't do certain things, but I think we had a little bit more integrity with it. Right? It was, we're going to do this and you're going to hide it because you know you're not supposed to be doing it. I think kids now, like we've seen a couple of episodes ago, where the kid got shot in the back in Baltimore, his mother knows what he's into and seems to be perfectly okay with it. Right? And that's the presence that we need to start to change, is that presence in the home that's not going to support or encourage, accept some of this stuff that they're doing because of what they're hearing in the streets or hearing in the music. I think we have to get our villages back.
You know, I agree with that. And I want to say, you just reminded me of something too, because after the last show, I felt like we were kind of hard on modern day artists, hip hop artists.
We should be. They're the problem.
No, and it's, we can have that perspective, right? But I felt like I know personally, I hadn't really listened to too much of their music. So I see sample sizes. What'd you say?
As you shouldn't.
Well, we can feel like that too. But it's hard to judge if we're not listening, right? Like,
I think the little bit that we've heard, like, did you ever figure out that line from Kodak Black? Did you get a line yet?
yes.
What's the line?
Now, Kodak, they don't want to see you living. They want you in the penitentiary.
Oh my God.
I fuck with that. I fuck with that record. I like that record. I'm gonna start listening to more of these new school artists because I started to listen to some of their records, and I realized it's not as bad as it's perceived to be. I think here's the issue. Our era, we came up in a hardcore era of hip hop. Big ass clothes, everybody's tough, hyper masculine, that era, right? This new era, tighter clothes, more feminine type of approaches. The delivery musically is not as clear. The direction is not one that seems bright, with all of the rapping about drug abuse and so on and so forth. It's definitely a different genre of music than or the music is different than what it was when we were coming up. But I don't think the music is any more detrimental than what we came up listening to. It's just different.
I disagree with that.
Well, you can disagree.
I'm gonna tell you why, real quick. This is real quick. I think it's more detrimental because we don't have the strong home presence.
We didn't have it back in the day.
We had more of it than we have now.
I don't know.
As I said, when you did certain things, you had to hide that from your parents.
I want us to end with the top 5 list again. I want to run that.
Mine ain't changed.
You got to change it.
No. First of all, when I watched back our last episode, what I recognized that you forgot was that I asked for your personal top 5. Okay. That's my personal top 5. So and I will not be judged for it.
Okay, so all right, fine. I'll give my personal top 5, which is what I listen to.
But I know that you ain't do that.
Because this is why I don't do top 5 lists, is because what I listen to is not what I would consider to be the same. It's not the same as what I would consider to be like the top 5. Like those are 2 separate things.
Me either, but that's why I asked you about your personal top 5.
Okay, so I ignored the word personal. So if I'm giving a personal top 5 without thought, my personal top 5: Nas, Big, probably Styles P, Kanye, and probably Loaded Lux, man. Or Nipsey.
I was gonna ask you what happened to that, because I remember you telling me that he was the greatest rapper of all time.
I didn't say he was the greatest of all time. I said he's the best in the world. He's the best in the world. And let me add some perspective to that, because we are on the internet and there are people who are going to be watching this who are not privy to our personal conversations. But in the arena of hip hop, this is the perspective that I have. In the arena of hip hop, music is a big aspect of it, right? However, I'm a fan of battle rap music, the art of battle rap. I'm a big fan of that. I've been following the culture from the Smack DVD era. For those who remember, buying the Smack DVDs back in the early 2000s, and then just fast forward into the end of the.
Real quick, this is why when we do the battle rap, we got to get my brother on here because he follows battle rap hard. Like,
there we go. We got to get him on.
Forced me to listen to some of them.
We got to get him on to discuss this. So your brother would
shout out to Shiz.
Shiz might appreciate what I'm about to say. But the reason why I got Lux up there is because I have so much respect for the battle rap arena for what they do, that if you can do that, which is rapping on the highest level, because all you have is words, and nowadays your performance, your movement, like the way you move with your body and everything like that, you got that too. But in that arena, all you have is words. There is no music. So to be able to excel in that arena, it means that you have an exceptional talent for words. If you can also make great music on top of that, I think that just puts you up another notch. And over the last few years, I've gotten pretty familiar with the music that Loaded Lux has been making over time. And it's forced me to accelerate him up the list, because in the arena of battle rap, as far as I'm concerned, he's the GOAT. He's the best to ever do it.
I'm gonna have to ask my brother about that.
He might not agree with that. He may. A lot of people believe Lux is the GOAT. So I'm
gonna ask him.
Ask him. I want to see what he says. But in the arena of battle rap, I believe that Lux is the GOAT. I don't think that anybody does what he does on that stage. And in the arena of music, he has a pretty impressive catalog of music that motivates the listener. It's really like this whole episode, we've been talking about the importance of growth and development. When you listen to Loaded Lux's music, he's giving you that. You hear it, and it's energizing. So because of that, I gotta elevate him. Like he challenges the listener to expand their mind, and he's not spoon feeding you with his lyrics. Like you have to actually think. Like we talked about on the last show, rewinding what he said, what he meant. That's what you're gonna get when you're listening to Lux. You might not catch it the first time. That's why he like Jay had a line on the song that Lux steals. I hear Lux say it all the time. Rewind and find there's more to find. Like when you're dealing with an artist who knows how to write in double and triple and quadruple entendres, the more you listen to it, it's like, oh shit, I just caught that. And I come from the era of listening to hip hop where that was a big thing. Like replay value was a big thing. Like I can still listen to like Illmatic and hear shit that I didn't hear, 25 years ago. I can still listen to Reasonable Doubt and hear shit that I didn't hear or fully understand, 25 years ago. So that's the beauty of artists like that. And Lux is one of those guys. So I'll put him in my top. Matter of fact, no. See, I listen to a lot of Kendrick too. So I'm going to say Nas, Big, Styles, Kendrick, and Lux.
Great. Take Kanye out. I'm here for it.
Those are probably the guys I listen to the most.
Take Kanye out. I'm here for it. Good job.
I'm going to find a way to get Kanye back in there. It might still change. Shout out to Kanye. I'm team Kanye still. But yeah, so your list hasn't changed. So there's I guess we don't have to review that again. But what do you want?
And just for those who don't know, hold up. We're going to reiterate my list just in case. Big, Jay. I'm mad Jay's not on your list, but I'm going to let that go. Big, Jay, Fab, Jada, Eminem. And I'm proud of it.
Okay. I mean, I have issue with you having Eminem top 5 and Fab.
Why? I think Eminem is tough.
Jada, top 5. All of those guys can rap. But
an issue with Jada being in my top 5. Like
I don't think Jada makes great music. I think Jada is a great rapper, but I don't think he makes great music. That's just my opinion. Like I think Styles makes great music. Like I can listen to a Styles P album and hardly ever have to skip a song. I don't feel the same way with Jada. That's just my opinion.
My feelings are valid.
Yeah, it's a cool list. It's a cool list.
I said my feelings are valid, and you said, Was that your response to my feelings?
I'm not a therapist, goddammit. So
these folks is my whole co-host. Carry on.
Hey, I'm
now
still,
y'all see what I got to do.
I'm still a work in progress myself.
So yes.
Let's do this. What is your takeaway for this episode as we wrap this up? What do you want people to walk away with?
I think the biggest thing for me is being responsible with the voice that you have. As I said, you can do it to get on, and that's okay. But once you get on, then I think you got to start to think about the message that you're trying to put out, and how it can truly shape our generations for the better, and being responsible with that kind of power.
Got it.
Real simple.
Got it. And I agree. I think it is important to keep that in mind. I think it's very important to keep that in mind. And, you know, young people, it's probably difficult for them to do that because young people don't want to be responsible for shit. That's the beauty of being young.
That's the problem. That is the problem.
With that in mind, for young people, if you don't want to be responsible for shit, one of the best ways to do that is to seek guidance. So I think it's important for young people in this space where you're making money, you have influence, you have power. What you should probably do is seek guidance from respected elders, people who have a better understanding of life and how the world works than you do, and ask them how you should move, how you should tailor your future, you know, so that it can be beneficial to all those that are following you. So you're not you won't be a lost person leading lost people. You know, that's not productive. So I think that's what we have to do. We have to, I just want people to walk away with that. Just consult with the people who have a better view of the game than you.
I was gonna say, that just off of what you just said, I think we got to take heed to people like Delores Tucker, right? And just notice and recognize that when people are talking, sometimes you gotta pay attention to that.
We getting out of here, man. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, please. Let us know in the comment section exactly what you feel about this situation.
And chime in, comment, and let us know what you think.
Please chime in, share this video. This is the discussion that we all need to be participating in. You should love yourself, but if you don't, we hate you too.
We hate you too.
I Hate Humans Podcast, King William Thompson and Princess G signing off.